So a lot of the people who are joining today have at one point read our article about the benefits of registering your Etsy shop or craft business. So some of these businesses that you may have could be the jewelry, be creating your own jewelry, furniture, and decor. So you could be doing the reverberation of it. There's the clothing. I've seen a lot of ladies do a lot of hand knitted items or their talented sewing skills that they tend to do at the markets. And then they have the cosmetics and home remedies. So the cosmetics side of things could be the creating your own, the lip balms, the bath bombs, there's so much. That line is so extensive. And then the home remedies are your herbs or oils that are also used for therapeutical reasons. So now it's 10:05 and let's get started. You've probably had your business for a bit and it could have been a hobby, just something you've done on the side. And at this time, you might now be growing your client list or what you're selling. So what most likely a lot of the people who've come to this seminar might be in that point of, hey, my little hobby here has now have taken a like to a lot of people. What are the next steps? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a couple of key areas that we're going to get you going so that keeps you safeguarded from running into issues with CRA. It makes you look more professional as well, a lot of things. So we're going to talk about business structure and what is right for you. A lot of people are small at this time, but there will be a point that you're going to get larger. And there's also certain types of business that people are going to be throwing around, and you need to know the difference between the two. We're going to be talking about saving the receipts because, as you know, you're going to be collecting revenue and you're going to be supposed to be paying tax on these revenues, but there's also expenses that can offset this as well. And then we're going to talk about the bookkeeping, accounting, and when to file your taxes. At this time, most of you have been doing your own gathering receipts and have been filing with your personal taxes, but we're just going to go a little bit further on in depth on this. So, determining what business structure is right for you. Currently, most of you are classified as sole proprietorship. This is also classified as a business owner that fits into this, or self-employed. This says that you are responsible for everything and whatever debts you take on, that is your responsibility. The other business structure is partnerships. Partnerships are a combination between two sole proprietorships that come together. So what's really famous about this is somebody who is, let's say in the Etsy industry, somebody who's going to be making, let's talk about jewelry. You may be making the pendant part, and then somebody else be making the necklace part. So you guys come together and bring your items together, which will then be shared of the profits and split between both of you. And the next one is the incorporation section. This is when you are in a lot of people say, well, you have to be really large to be incorporated. Well, that's not the case, but this is one of the things, and we're going to discuss the difference between now a sole proprietorship and an incorporation. Now, the difference between the two. So sole proprietorship, it is very simple to form. Most of you probably didn't realize this, that technically became a sole proprietorship when you first made your sale with whatever you had made or sold on your Etsy or as a small business owner. You're technically now classified as a sole proprietorship. It was very easy, wasn't it? Just simply sell something and now you're a business owner. You're also responsible for the debt of the business. So I've seen a lot of people sometimes take out larger loans because they need to buy materials. At the end of the day, you are the one who has to be responsible for paying it back. And then there's the choosing the business name. A lot of you have at this time may or may not got a business name. You should consider registering your business name because it's now professional and it keeps you out of trouble in the event that somebody else has this business name that you should be using. It's kind of like the rights of having that to use that name. So yes, you can choose a business name, which then you can register that through a registry office to get that name. And then it's not safe from legal liability. The best way to talk about this is if you're making a product that is a cosmetic or home remedy, in the event that something goes wrong, if somebody comes back to you and says, the product wasn't good, it burnt my skin or something, if they sue you, it's open to whatever you have for ownership. So if you own a house, a car, or anything like that, it's they can go after you for legal liability, and your payment of that is based on your assets. I know it's kind of scary. So hopefully most of you have insurance if you are in the cosmetic or home remedy industry. The next part is the corporations. Now, I know some people are like, oh, I'm not ready for a corporation, but at this time, what I'm trying to show you is to distinguish between the two, because a lot of people realize that, hey, are you a business owner? Yes, I'm a business owner. Are you incorporated? Well, what does that mean? Well, it's like legal entities. So we're going to go through this, and it's important to distinguish between the two because you don't want to get mixed up on on these two because of the legal liability side of stuff and the representation of what it means. So it is a little bit more complex and expensive to form. When I say more complex, it means within Core Pro 8, we allow you to incorporate. It's expensive because when you register your sole proprietorship, it is usually around the $100 mark. When you're doing the incorporation side, it's about $500. As you see, the cost is quite different. It's classified as a legal entity. As a sole proprietorship, it is you who represents that business. As a corporation, they classify, once you register it, as a person, its own legal entity, completely separate from you. You can choose a business name. So a lot of trades I find that they are starting out, they have a name already that's registered. You can take that name and move it over to the business that you have. And finally, there's legal protection. This is when you get to the point of, I've seen people who do a lot of woodworking, and in the event that something happens where they're hiring somebody and they get injured, the company is responsible and they can only go after whatever the company owns, nothing outside of that is owned by the individual who is running it. And finally, the taxes of the year are done on a different time date than what a proprietorship would be. So usually they're, as its own business, they usually have a different year end. Now, let's move on to saving your receipts. Why is this important? Let me tell you a story. Before I go on, let me just tell you a little story about a friend I have that owns a carpentry business. He is not incorporated, and he came to me because I'm a tax accountant and I had to complete his year end. So he had about 3 years worth of revenue to claim in his personal taxes because that's how far he was. A lot of people don't realize that you have to file, which we're going to talk about here, your revenue streams with your personal taxes. So he's coming to me and he's like, here's all my receipts, because he kept everything in a receipt book. And in your personal taxes, every penny that you make is what you're paying taxes on. So yes, he brought me his receipt book, but I said, well, where's all your receipts for the expenses? Because you obviously had to buy equipment, like your tools, to help with what you're doing for your job. You had your cell phone to make calls and take that. There was other things such as the material he bought and the traveling distance, so the gas on that. There's a lot of things you can gather as expenses to offset the revenues you make, right? Because why would you want to pay taxes on the full value revenue when you know you took a portion of that to purchase other things to do your job? So that's why they says the only way to lower your taxes is applying those expenses. Now, the rule of thumb is if you don't have these receipts and you get audited, it's a no-go. The CRA will not allow you to deduct anything, and it's happening. It's probably in this time period, there has been more audits. Actually, last year, it's actually increased because there's so much extra money being plowed into that department that we're getting a lot of audits for small business owners. So it is very important to keep your receipts so that you can pay the less taxes and keep those because it's conforming with what's required by Canada Revenue Agency. So what are some of the expenses that you can claim? As I discussed, if you are a person who's buying the material to create something, those receipts that you have to keep that are used to buy those materials. A lot of people say, what about the tools I have? I have like scissors or a sew machine, or if you're doing jewelry, you have like a lot of the hand tools. Those are deductible. The next question might be, I bought those a couple of years ago. I don't have the receipts. Then what? My suggestion is you're technically going to have to create a receipt and sell it to your proprietorship because it becomes another classification as an asset, and that's the only way you're going to get reimbursed back. Do not make it to a value that is higher than what you would buy it for or lower. That's another key point. So how do you do? Go to Kijiji or some place that shows what that tool is worth, and that's what you're going to have to sell it to your business for. A couple people said, well, I go to meetings, coffee meetings, gatherings. What about that? Yes, you can deduct those costs for going to your meetings. The tea or whatever you're eating, those are used as deductions. If you're paying to see a mentor, I do this sometimes. I have to go see somebody to do my marketing as a mentor. I have to pay for her. Those are deductible. Your advertising expenses. if you're going to the markets, you have your fees that you pay for the market there. If you didn't get an invoice, ask them for a bill for it, ask them for the bill for that, because that is deductible. If you don't have a receipt from them or something proving that you paid for it, it's like a no-go. They won't give it to you for Canada Revenue Agency. And then finally, there is the registration of the business. So hopefully, ladies, gentlemen, who have these Etsy businesses or that, you have registered your business. Theoretically, you should have your business name registered, which you can do through Corporate, as well as you should have a city business license as well. By law, for working in the cities or even in your town, you should have applied for a business license, which is also good for you too, because now it also makes you more professional, because it shows you people that, hey, you're open for business and you're open to get more clients and customers, right? Now, let's move over to bookkeeping, accounting, and when to file your taxes. So I would like to first talk about the importance of keeping all your paperwork together and organized. When you are a proprietorship, I'm going to call that, or self-employed, we keep all our clients' things together in two different ways. First of all, when you're a little bit larger, you tend to have your own bank account that's designated for the business. So you should have all your bank statements together with the receipts with that organized together. And if you use your personal account, the way I like to see it organized and brought to me as an accountant is it's organized based in your expense categories and totaled as well. So that's the way you keep it organized. Now, when I do your year end, which is filing in your personal taxes, usually you bring this package to me and it's filed no later than June. Sounds funny, you have to pay your taxes in April for this, but it has to be paid by June. At this time, a lot of people are saying, well, what about the proprietorships for this year? Everything has to be in by September, just to let you know. So any other year after this, it will be due by June, but your taxes are due in April. How do you know what you're owing? Well, you don't. You just make sure that there's a payment in there for this. Okay, organizing your data, basically your receipts, is based on your totals, based on revenues and expenses of the categories, unless you have a bank that's designated for this business. And then the next part is finding a bookkeeper or an accountant. I think my most big pain point I have to discuss is finding a good bookkeeper and accountant. So right now, it's great. You guys are a lot smaller. You don't have to worry about this. But maybe if I could give you a couple of good tips about what to look for when you are going to find a bookkeeper, because maybe you might grow at that point and you need that organization. There are different types of bookkeepers you got to watch out for. So there's usually what I'd ask for is what their credentials are. So how long you've been doing for. Doesn't mean just how long they've been doing bookkeeping for, but where did they practice? Like, where did they get their experience from? Because somebody who's worked in an accounting office would have a lot of guidance from the accounting industry and have that know-how versus somebody who is self-taught. And bookkeepers who are self-taught don't have those tools to give you the best edge on recording those expenses or looking for those expenses. They're just going to be data entries. And for accountants, when you're doing that, the next thought I'll be asking is, do they keep themselves updated for the current trending? Like accountant, you're filing taxes, things change all the time. It's like rules of chess. And I would ask, when did they do their last training or updating? Because the rules and everything change, and you just want to make sure you're compliant with Canada Revenue Agency and everything that has to go in with that. Now, I just want to go talk back again a little bit on some of the stuff that we just talked about how to be successful. Some tips is determine the right business structure. So back again, I know you're very small at this time, and it's great. You're going to get growing and get larger, and after a certain time period, you're going to have to incorporate because you're going to be making probably over the $60,000 range. So when you're small at this time, it's good to distinguish that because they're going to start using lingos. Are you self-employed? Yes. Are you incorporated? Well, you know you're not. You're sole proprietorship. But hopefully, someday you'll be incorporated. And then the next talk we talked about was the saving your receipts. After this, a lot of people might be asking me, do I have anything that I can give you? I'll be sending you something in the emails that will give you a link for our tax savings tips. We just saw this on the 7 ways to save your money before you start a business. We'll be sending that to you in an email here after. And who weren't able to attend today, you'll get this as well. And then finally, we talked about the bookkeeping and accounting, about how to organize receipts. All right, so if you got a moment, I would like to take some questions. Up in the right-hand corner, there will be a place for you guys to ask me some questions, and hopefully I can answer them for you. Okay, I have a question from Sarah. She says, I use my cell phone for my business. Is this a tax deduction? Okay, your cell phone is kind of a little iffy for us. We do a partial deduction because you do your cell phone for your business. However, your cell phone isn't 100% used for business, so we have to take a prorated amount based on your cell phone and usage per month. So yes, it is deductible, but only a percentage of it. I have a message from Dan. He asks, what about home office space? That's a good question. A lot of you guys work from home and create a lot of your products from your home before you, however means you use to sell it. At the end of the year, when you visit your accountant, they should be asking you for your home office expense. It's a year-end deduction. And like I said before, your house is not 100% deducted, only a portion of it is. So usually what I ask is to give me the totals of a category based on your utilities and certain other things, and I take a certain amount of that and use it towards your business. Jamie just asked me, I hire my daughter to help me create some of her products. So what industry are you in? She does clothing. She sells masks. Okay, so if you are hiring somebody or paying somebody to do work for you to create the products, when you pay them, you should have a receipt book that says that they got money from you to do this job. And that receipt is being used as a deduction for your business because you're using and hiring somebody for helping hands. This also reminds me of, I should talk about advertising. Your advertising expenses on whatever methods you use. So a lot of people do social media, or they go on Kijiji or Craigslist. Any payment for these advertisements, you should be printing those off, and those are also tax deductions. Okay, I got another question here about when is it good to go from proprietorship to incorporation? All right, I'm going to tell you a little piece about this, but I would really highly recommend you going into our Corporate 8 program because we could do a lot more extensive discussion about this because of the benefits and pros and cons. There is a dollar value that I personally recommend you incorporating on because you got to a growth point beyond 60,000, and there's a lot more tax benefits and liability stuff. So it's not just about the money that you make, but it's also about the liability that you might have. So that's one other thought I would like to discuss is there is a dollar value, but there's also a whole bunch of other trigger things that would want you to incorporate on. But I can't go too much farther in that discussion today. Okay, so somebody says on Etsy, they do their selling their products and they have to usually pay an additional fee for their products when they're sold. There should be something on your program that shows you the amount that somebody else collects off of you for selling your product. You have to print those at the end of the years, and those are deductions. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for joining us today on discussion about this setup tips for your business. There are lots of blogs we have posted that could be used for your use, but there's also things inside of our Corporate 8 program that will guide you along your path and your journey as being a proprietorship. But thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope to see you guys soon.